The 2018 Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk Young Debate Series. Brought to you from the studios of Georgia Public Broadcasting. The Republican race for State School Superintendent.
Good afternoon. I'm Ricky Bevington, a senior anchor and correspondent, as well as the local host of All Things Considered at Georgia Public Broadcasting. Welcome to the Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk Young Debate Series, originating from the studios of GPB in Atlanta. This is the debate among Republican candidates for State School Superintendent. Let's meet the candidates. They are in alphabetical order. John Barge is the past state school superintendent and the current superintendent of McIntosh County Schools, and he spent 27 years as a public educator in Georgia. And Richard Woods is the current Georgia State School Superintendent and has over 22 years of experience in public education. And now let's meet our panelists. Ashley Garrett is a weekend anchor with WRBL-TV in Columbus, Georgia. Stephanie Stokes is a reporter for WABE 90.1 FM. And Ty Tagami is an education reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. And now let's get started. For the rules on today's debate, please visit the Atlanta Press Club website, atlantapressclub.org. To start the debate, each candidate will be asked one question by one of our panelists. Ashley Garrett, you get the first question to John Barge.
Thank you so much. Mr. Barge, the very first thing listed under the Issues tab on your campaign site is Real Leadership for School Safety. You mentioned supporting initiatives that include having trained and equipped retired military to assist in securing our schools. What's your response to those parents who are strongly against this and advocating for tighter gun laws?
Well, my response would be that we're in a really difficult time in public school history when it comes to school safety, school shootings, and we need to be thinking about everything that we can do to keep our children safe. That's our number one priority is to educate children, and they can't learn if they don't feel safe and secure in their schools. I think it's a much better option to have trained retired police and military people who are already trained in the use of weapons, that are trained to de-escalate situations, to have people like that who are volunteering in our schools in some cases because they want to give back, they want to be a help, they want to be a support, and ultimately they're keeping our children safe. And to me, it's a much better solution than arming teachers and teachers having to worry about another issue or another thing that they have to do besides teach.
Thank you for being within time. And Stephanie Stokes, you may ask Richard Woods a question.
Superintendent Woods, voters are lucky this time to have two candidates who have already done the job of state school superintendent. How do you think your past term as the superintendent differed from your opponents?
Well, I think we've taken advantage of what's been given to us. Both of us worked underneath the same governor, the same lieutenant governor, for the most part, the same General Assembly and state board. As I look at what I promised that I would seek to attempt to accomplish, I've lived up to that. We've seen the largest reduction of state-mandated testing in our state's history. We have put our children first in looking at making sure that we give them an exemplary number of opportunities that are out there. We've looked at providing our teachers with opportunities to, once again, spend time with their kids, again, by reducing really some onerous steps in which everyone had to be observed the same amount. But we continue to look at, and I think you look at the results. Again, I have not spent time, running for other things, but again, focusing on the children of Georgia, and I think the results speak for themselves.
Thank you for your answers. That concludes the first portion of this debate. The candidates will now ask a question to their opponent, and here's how it works. Each candidate will have 30 seconds to ask the question, 60 seconds to respond, and 30 seconds for rebuttal. And by random selection, Richard Woods has the first question.
Okay, thank you. Again, during the past few weeks, my opponent has criticized the department and myself for my role for leadership and, on a state ranking based on a report. The same organization ranked Georgia 38th in 2014. I was not installed until 2015 as your state school superintendent. And also since that time, we've looked at, my opponent has been at a new place, and again, looking at his performance. And my question is, what is your performance?
Okay.
Okay, I'm trying to make sense of that question. First of all, in 2014, Education Week, who is by far the leading national education journal in the country, did not rank states in 2014 in overall education quality. Anyone who reads the report will see that they only ranked them in the individual indicators that they evaluated. So you may be looking at one indicator, but it's not the overall ranking, because overall rankings were not given in 2014. Regarding my current situation, I was hired to a district that was experiencing some very serious dysfunction. And we have made tremendous strides, including last year, our one high school being named a U.S. News and World Report's bronze level winner in best high schools in America. So we are ranked in the top 3 of our entire RESA area in moving the needle from when students come into 3rd grade to 8th grade in reading growth.
Thank you. And John Barge, you may now ask a question.
All right. When I left office, Georgia's educational system was ranked 7th in the nation overall quality. At the end of your 4 years in office...
I failed to allow Superintendent Woods a rebuttal. Okay. 30 seconds.
Okay. Again, what you find out is that looking at current performance of my opponent down in his system, you'll see an elementary school that has dropped 28 points. You've seen a middle school that has dropped 5 points. You have seen a high school that has dropped 7 points. And in reading, they have dropped 11 points. But today, what we are looking at is that we have to have effective change. Again, when the state is moving up, we are moving forward. And so this is what we're looking at. Leadership does matter. Leadership does count.
Thank you. Mr. Barge.
All right, thank you. When I left office, Georgia's educational system was ranked 7th in the nation in overall quality. At the end of your 4 years in office, Georgia had plummeted to 33rd, where we sit currently. During the same time frame, you've experienced an approximately 70% turnover in your senior staff and 2 whistleblower lawsuits in which the State Attorney General's office refuses to represent you. How do you explain the loss of so many talented educators, the precipitous decline in our national ranking, 2 whistleblower lawsuits, and why would the Attorney General's office refuse to represent you?
Well, again, as you look at the lawsuit in general, what you find out is you had individuals who were there prior to coming on board who believed in the consequence and compliance model. What we have attempted to do is within the framework of what we're being accused of is actually providing our local schools with flexibility that provides them opportunities to use federal funds to address such things as mental health or school resource officers, again, what my opponent has mentioned. But also what we find out is that one of the litigants was actually a former political appointee of my opponent. That opponent or that individual had over a year to actually, bring suit against us in any form or fashion. But unfortunately, what we have found out is that individual came just short of the primary and made that accusation. But what you'll find out is we've been in contact with the feds. We have not broken a law. And again, we have hired the very best people and not our friends in positions of leadership.
And now 30 seconds for rebuttal.
Well, the fact that the State Attorney General's office, who is the state entity who is sort of charged with representing state agencies and state officials in lawsuits, when they refuse to represent you, there is a serious problem. And the fact that it's had to go to a private law firm means that the taxpayers of Georgia will be footing a bill for very pricey private attorneys and some potentially high settlements.
Thank you both for your questions and answers. For those of you just joining us, this is a debate between the Republican candidates for State School Superintendent. We will now go back to the panel to ask questions to the candidate of his or her choice, this until we run out of time. As a point of moderator privilege, I may also ask a question of the candidates. I will determine when a rebuttal is appropriate. Tai Tagami, you get the first question.
Superintendent Woods, Governor Nathan Deal just signed a $10 billion education budget that fully funds schools based on our formula. He said that means schools no longer have any excuses for their performance. Do you agree with him, and do schools indeed have enough money?
Well, I think as far as the statement that we have no excuses, I've never been one to make an excuse. The fact is that we have funding, we've had opportunity, and I've worked in the small school system, so I know the challenges. Do we have enough money? I think one of the things we look at is that we need to revisit the QBE formula. Again, something that was based on 1985 education is really outdated. And so when you look at technology, when you look at transportation, those are things that we have to visit. So to say that do we have enough money, I think until we get an appropriate funding formula, I don't know that we can really say that we do, because we have to address the issues that, again, have greatly changed throughout the year. But we're going to continue to do. Our educators have performed greatly. And again, as you look at, even with not having money, we have an 80% graduation rate, and we are moving forward, and you see upticks on all measurements across the state.
Thank you. I have to commend our candidates for being very, very well on time. So thank you. Ashley Garrett, you have the next question.
Okay, Mr. Barge, part of your platform includes allowing children to move through the educational system at their own pace and in their own way, not one preset by the system. How exactly do you propose implementing a system that would best benefit our students, teachers, and staff?
Well, the best way to do that is with being innovative, creative, and leveraging technology. We have the potential to broaden what we offer students and how we offer it to students. Not every child learns the same way. They don't learn at the same pace. Our job as educators is to help children find their passion, what are they interested in, and design an educational opportunity for them to be successful. And that can easily be done even in a rural school system like mine. We don't have a red light in our entire county. We have 1,400 students pre-K through 12th grade, but we have just developed a career pathway, or in the process of developing a career pathway to address the needs of our largest industry, which is shrimping. We're on the Georgia coast. So we will have students next year being able to complete a career pathway in commercial fishing. So it simply takes being creative, taking off the goggles, so to speak, and opening yourself up to ideas and opportunities and leveraging technology to do that.
Thank you. Stephanie Stokes, your turn.
Superintendent Barge, we heard Superintendent Woods say a moment ago that he has not spent time running for other things, and I assume that's he's referencing the fact that you left the state school superintendent position to run for the governor's seat. How do you justify that, and how do you justify your current run, seeking the seat again?
Sure. I'm very passionate about education. I know education levels the playing field. I've experienced that. I ate free lunch growing up. I know what it's like to grow up in an abusive home with an alcoholic father. I know that, and I know that education levels the playing field. I've experienced it. I'm passionate about it. So back 4 years ago, when we had school districts across Georgia who were months away from bankruptcy because we'd withheld over $4 billion in public funds from them that they've earned, I didn't know any other way to raise that issue, and it was simply done out of passion. Now, I will tell you, I didn't make this decision to run again without having some very critical conversations across this state. I was asked to run by a number of superintendents and other folks across the state, and I sat down with the governor. And he and I are on good speaking terms. We had the best conversation we have ever had, in my opinion, and he was not opposed to this run.
Thank you. Tai Tagami, next question.
Superintendent Woods, 2 out of 3 third graders can't read on grade level. They're not proficient readers. That sets them up for failure later in life. I'm wondering, what would you do to fix that problem?
Well, actually, we've already begun the process. One of the individuals that I did hire up in my senior leadership was an individual who is both state now and nationally renowned as far as reading. We actually, under her leadership, have created a statewide literacy plan, which we did not have, prior to taking office. We've also received the highest grant awardee as far as looking at our Striving Readers grant of any state. Only 2 states that actually received the second awardee of this, and the highest monetary grant. Continuing on that, we've stretched out and reached to other industries and business and nonprofit profit groups. We work with the Get Georgia Reading campaign as well. By the end of the summer, we will actually have delivered over 300,000 books to individuals. So we continue to have partnerships, continue to look at what we need to do and look at reading outside of just academics, but again, also trying to reach to our young people and parents even before they get into school is where we need to start. Thank you.
Thank you. Ashley Garrett, next question.
Mr. Woods, on your campaign site, there's a statement that reads in part, you have ensured all Georgia, including rural Georgia, has had a voice in Atlanta. Please explain more ways of how exactly this has benefited the students of Georgia.
Well, I think coming from a small rural district, that of Irwin, which I worked for over 22 years, you understand, and especially being a superintendent up here in Atlanta, that sometimes you can get inside a box, and this position represents all of Georgia. One of the things we look at is that when we have advisory groups, whether it's a superintendent, whether it's teacher, whether it's even students, both middle school and high school, we take into consideration of getting a good broad representation of our population throughout the state so we can hear and listen to them. Every school, and again, I've just about visited every school district in the state of Georgia. When I step in, I begin to ask the questions. How can we best serve you at the state level? And that goes from whether we're looking metro or whether we're looking at from the smallest district, to make sure that we're being responsive and making sure that as we begin to look and plan that we are doing things that meets the needs of our school districts and not coming down with a compliant and consequence mandate that really has riddled our state for years.
Thank you. Stephanie Stopes.
Superintendent Barge, there's been a lot of criticism of high-stakes testing, not just in Georgia, but across the country, and also from your opponent, Superintendent Woods. What do you see as the future of testing in Georgia?
Well, the criticism is warranted. We do place way too much emphasis on high-stakes testing. We have an obsession in this country with testing and comparisons. When you look at the best-performing countries around the world, they don't test like we do. We really need to look at better ways of testing. My opponent talks about the greatest cuts in assessment in state history. During our administration, we eliminated the Georgia high school graduation test, which prevented literally thousands and thousands of Georgians from receiving their high school diploma and being able to go move on to post-secondary education or to work. Many places won't even hire you if you don't have a high school diploma. And I think we missed a tremendous opportunity. April 2nd of last month was the deadline with the federal government for states to file for flexibility to the current federal assessment requirements. Georgia failed to file a request. So we had the opportunity and we declined.
Thank you very much. I would like to take moderator privilege and ask a question of our Superintendent Woods. Teachers are currently off work today in Arizona. This is a pattern across the country. I'd like to hear from you about how, as state school superintendent, you can better take care of Georgia's teachers.
I think, first of all, we have to listen to Georgia. One of the things we did, coming into office, is that we had a survey in which almost half the teaching force of Georgia actually responded. So we listened and we heard, what their needs were. Again, largely that dealt around the overstatement of testing we had. As my opponent mentioned, yes, we do have a lot of testing, but a lot of that testing, again, came from that administration. We talked about the milestones. Something we did not mention was the student learning objectives, again, in which every single course had a high-stakes mandated testing attached to it. We came in and we removed those. We continued to look at the observations for our children, or our teachers, to make sure they have an environment. We said that every teacher needed to have the same level of observation, which was a waste of time for both teachers and for administrators. So again, by listening and again moving forward with our teachers, we are making changes. We are making changes that address the needs of each and every individual. And again, we will continue to do that by having an open dialogue with our staff members.
Thank you very much. Ty Tagami, next question.
Superintendent Barge, you're in rural Georgia. I'm wondering if you have any insights into helping schools hire teachers. That's a problem across rural Georgia, especially STEM teachers.
Absolutely. In fact, our school district is moving towards the entire district being STEM certified. So I know what that challenge is. We had a math vacancy the entire year last year that we could not fill. So the teacher shortage in Georgia is real, and it's not just in rural Georgia. There were some 40, 50 math teaching vacancies across the state all year last year. So math is a critical area. We're currently teaching foreign language through a virtual program because we can't find a foreign language teacher. So I think looking at the funding formula as something that's been addressed is one way. As a rural county, we receive no equalization formula. We have 100% of our students on free lunch. So we receive no additional funds from the state to bring us up to that 25th level. And that's critical. What the formula doesn't account for is that over a third of our land in our county is owned by the federal government or state government. So we receive no tax revenue, and we have no potential to create tax revenue from that. So we certainly need to look at that formula and create some opportunities where we can actually enhance them for teachers to come.
Time. Thank you. Ashley Garrett, next question.
Superintendent Woods, where I live in Muskogee County, many parents complain there needs to be more catering to special needs students, more parapros in classes, for example. What, if any, plans would you put in place that could benefit these special needs kids in our area?
Well, one of the things we're actually working on is a pilot in which we are looking at flexibility with Title I funds. And so by doing so, we allow our districts to use money that perhaps was been limited and very pigeonholed to now be used to meet those specific needs. Again, for those schools that have such a high population of special needs students, this gives them a great opportunity to do so. We continue to reach out, to the federal government to make changes to IDEA, which I would have really loved to have seen, that being done while in conjunction with our state plan with ESSA. As we continue to move forward, again, it is looking at how we can look at flexibility. But I think one of the things we find out is that we have to work with our local school systems and definitely with our legislature to make funding that's more appropriate, so that we can better target and use resources. But again, we've given our schools choices to be charter so that they can move around money and funding as they need based on their need.
Thank you. Stephanie Stokes, next question.
Superintendent Barge, your opponent, Superintendent Woods, helped develop the Georgia State Plan under ESSA, the Every Student Succeeds Act. What do you agree with in that plan and what do you disagree with?
Well, one of the things as a local superintendent that was extremely frustrating is that it took 2 years for us to develop that plan. And while we were developing that plan, local school districts were just kind of adrift out there. So we would get one message from the department about we're going to go this direction. We would spend a lot of time going in that direction, and then we would wind up not going that direction and going a different direction. I have one person in my school district that does curriculum, that does federal programs, and that just monopolized a lot of time that ended up being wasted. So there are some things that I agree in ESSA, that I agree with our ESSA plan. The flexibility is one area that I'm grateful for. But again, the area that I think that we missed it in our ESSA plan is not requesting the opportunity for flexibility in the federal assessment guidelines. When we had the opportunity to do so, we declined.
Could Superintendent Woods respond to that?
I will allow it, yes.
Okay.
And then I do have another moderator privilege question for Woods. So.
Okay, sure. When you look at the ESSA plan, again, it was one in which we collaborated across the state. We involved all of Georgia. So again, as far as looking at the timeline, the feds set 2 dates as far as our application process. So again, we were working. I'm glad we started early with that. As you look at the process itself, we involved all of Georgia, which was highly, I guess in a different direction compared to what we did with Race to the Top and No Child Left Behind. Again, one of which was the waiver with my opponent.
Thank you. And finally, I'd like to give Superintendent Woods an opportunity to answer the earlier question about arming teachers.
Okay. Well, I think that, this definitely is a local decision. It's one that we need to look at having a very comprehensive plan and looking at all options. One of the things that we are doing currently is that when we have school plans that come up as far as facilities, we're in charge of looking at that to make sure that the school systems are taking, safety into account. One of the things that as well we'll be meeting and continue to meet with GEMA. Again, they handle our school safety plans, such as working with tornado drills, bomb drills, and so this falls underneath that. We are currently waiting, I think, with some legislation to see whether that will be a mandated drill. If not, then we will make that a mandated drill at the state level. But also, I think for, as far as arming teachers, that has to be a local decision. We cannot mandate that from the state because they know their communities. But I think that one of the things we continue to look at all options. And again, we have our support, and we're going to do what's best to make sure our kids are secure across the state.
And I believe that that is all the time we have for questions for each candidate. Now each gentleman will have 60 seconds for a closing statement. Richard Woods, you get the first closing statement.
Again, thank you, GPB, and again, all our panelists, again, for hosting us and being with us today. You know, today as we look at education in Georgia and taking on this role roughly 4 years ago, I think what I found out is that Georgians are interested in two things from their elected officials. One, did you do what you say you were going to do? And again, do you have results? Well, I've lived up to the words, and everything you look at, and you can look at my past record and what I ran on. I did not waver from that and continue to make sure that we focus on Georgia's kids and making sure that they are our top priority. As to look at results, we have the highest, we're looking at the highest graduation rate in our state's history. We have the highest, reduction of mandated, testing in our state's history. Our kids are succeeding. Again, if you are part of, an AP class, you have a 98%, option of graduating. We have STEM and STEAM education going across the state, and roughly 1,100 kids have that opportunity. Again, instead of for 30 minutes or 30 seconds, I could talk for 30 hours on the good things that are going on. So again, go to woodsforsuper.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And our final closing statement.
Thank you for everyone for hosting today's debate. When making your decision on May 22nd, I ask that you keep one thing in mind. Our children's education is far too important to place in the hands of an inexperienced leader. The results can be devastating, as we've seen today. Whether it's making decisions that embroil the state agency in whistleblower lawsuits, or the state falling in its ranking and overall quality from 7th to 33rd, or placing a ping pong table in the office so the folks in the department can play while they're at work, or losing a majority of senior staff, my opponent's record is questionable when it comes to leadership. On the other hand, during my tenure in office, we were the only state in the nation to grow in student achievement on every national test. We created over 100 career pathways. We grew overall educational quality from 13th to 7th. The choice is clear. You can elect a politician who spends more time campaigning and taking advantage of photo ops, or you can elect a leader who's proven, who's been in the trenches, knows how to do it. Thank you for the time, and I ask for your vote on May 22nd.
Thank you very much. That concludes our debate. We'd like to remind voters that the primary elections will be held Tuesday, May 22nd. Early voting has begun. Our thanks to the candidates and to our panel of journalists. We'd also like to thank the Atlanta Press Club for arranging today's debate. For more information, go to atlantapressclub.org. I'm Ricky Bevington. Thank you.